Specialize as soon as possible is trash advice to give to new software developers. Let me explain why. I came to this realization in part because a lot of YouTubers and content creators that I watch have started talking about it more vocally, and they have formulated their thoughts around it a lot better than I have, but I'm going to give it a shot at least, and we'll see if I can get a coherent thought out. The main reason why I realize that this is bad advice, though, is because I took this advice and now I'm having to pay for it. So my hope in this video is that folks who are listening to it, who are kind of starting out in software development or are kind of on the same road that I've been on, will learn from my mistakes instead of going that far down the road like I have. I started writing React before I had ever written a single line of JavaScript. I had not written, and I'm not kidding, a single line of JavaScript before I cracked open React. I dove into Next before I had mastered most of the fundamentals of React. This is probably possible, and I'll let other folks who are more knowledgeable of this talk on it, but my understanding and the thing that I'm kind of realizing now is that you kind of probably should master some of the fundamentals of React before you move on to what is objectively a more complicated framework like Next. And I know I'm probably using the word framework wrong there, bite me. In general, started writing web applications too early. I started writing web apps which have like 1,000 layers of abstraction before I really learned how to write good code. And I'm paying for this now. I'm having to completely rewrite the backend for my cybersecurity SaaS application because I wrote the backend really badly because I didn't understand what I was doing. I'm probably going to end up having to rewrite the front end because A, it's ugly, and B, I didn't do a very good job at it because I don't understand React and Next well enough to do a good front end. So it's really inefficient. There are lots of different problems with it. And now I'm kind of having to pay for that. There are a couple of things wrong with the piece of advice of specialize as soon as possible that folks are giving to a lot of new developers. And the reason why I'm making this video really kind of forms around two different parts of this advice, or two reasonings why I think that specialization in general is a bad piece of advice to give new developers. First is probably a misunderstanding on the new developers' part, but because they're new developers, you can't blame them as much. Specialization does not equal pick a framework. Telling somebody to go specialize does not mean go and pick a framework and become just bomb at it. Just really dig into React and understand how all of the hooks work. Just really dig into Next and be the 1 out of 5 people in this world who can understand like what SSR versus SSG versus CSR versus whatever is. Really become that person who understands how all of this stuff works. That's not what most people are doing. Most people are kind of becoming like React Andes and they kind of understand how components work in general. That's me. I'm that guy. But 2, that's not specialization. That's not the specialization that you're really thinking about when you're thinking about specializing in something. When people say go and specialize, they're not saying go and become an expert at React, Next, Vue, Bun, Lambda, Patella, Geronimo, or whatever coked out name that they've got for React frameworks now, or JavaScript frameworks in general. They're saying go and specialize in an area of computer science or of software engineering and become good at that. And there are good reasons for that. Folks who specialize in embedded software engineering or in web development or in kernel development, they make good money. Game development, unfortunately, is a little bit different, which is kind of bullshit because game developers are like some of the most incredible devs I've ever met. Anyways, that's an aside for another time. They're saying go and specialize in a field, or that's what you really want to do. Whenever they're telling you to go specialize, in a lot of new developers' brains, they're like, okay, I'm going to go become really good at Next. I'm going to go become really good at Vue. And that's not really what you should do. If you want to go and make the big bucks, if you want to go and become a highly prestigious engineer, go and become somebody who specializes at web development, not at React, not at Next, not at Vue, not at Bun, not at Geronimo or Patella or Cochlea or whatever the new JavaScript framework of the year is. Go and specialize in web development. Become the guy who knows everything about web development, or the girl who knows everything about web development and can write anything in any kind of framework. Now, there's somebody right now, I'm going to stop you if you're that person. There's somebody right now who's writing up a really angry YouTube comment saying, oh, but none of the jobs say that. None of the jobs say we're looking for a senior web developer. All of the jobs say we're looking for a senior Vue developer We're looking for a senior React developer. This part's going to be a little bit more controversial, but what I'm going to tell you to do is functionally lie. You need to leave. Now, that does not mean lie and be a guy who is really, really good at Vue and has never written any React, or really, really good at Python but has never written any JavaScript. Don't lie that way. What I'm saying is go become a really good web developer who can write stuff in just about any framework as long as they can kind of pick up the syntax, play around with all of the different frameworks, play around with Next and React and Vue and whatever else, and be the guy who's like good at it. And whenever you get to resume time, if they're asking for 4 years in React and you've done 4-ish years in web development, just click, I got that. Just say you've got 4 years in React. Because the reality is all of this stuff is written by HR who needed like some really stringent requirements around, well, what are we looking at? How many years of experience? Blah, blah, blah. And years of experience is kind of bullshit. So it's okay if you are somebody who knows their stuff to say, yeah, I got 4 years. And whenever it comes to interview time and they ask you for your actual background, say, I've got these 50 different applications that I've written in 4 different frameworks, and I understand this, this, and this about hydration, and I understand this about components, and I understand this about hooks, and I understand. And when you're in that interview and they're listening to you say all of the stuff that you actually understand, they're not going to care if you actually only have 2 years of React experience, because that would be silly. What they're looking for is a good web developer, and all of their existing code is in React. And if you are a good web developer, you'll be able to write in that code base, in that React code base. What I'm telling you is not go and learn 5 lines of React and learn how to run create React app and then go and say that you are a web developer with 5 years of experience in Vue. That's stupid. I'm not telling you to do that. What I'm telling you to do is go and become a web development specialist, somebody who in general knows a lot about web development, and then don't worry about the 4 years of experience requirement on the resume, because you'll be good at React. You'll be good at web development. And you'll go and ace that interview more than the guy with 4 years of React will. Because the guy with 4 years of React who has not done any other web development is not going to understand how any of this shit works. He's not going to understand how hydration works under the hood. He's not going to understand how to pass all of your props around in the most efficient way so that you're not constantly re-rendering everything. Like you're going to understand that because you've become a good web developer in general. The second part of this that I don't love, the second part of that piece of advice of specializing as soon as possible, that I don't love is that folks will specialize way too soon. Even if you take the real definition of specialization, the one that I talked about a second ago, that is you need to specialize in a specific area of software development. Even if they use that definition, you don't need to do that very quickly. You probably don't need to do that ever. We'll talk about that here in a second, but you probably don't need to become a specialist very quickly right out of college. And here's why. So the reality of software development, after you spend a bit of time doing it, is that becoming good at software development in general will translate across multiple different expertise. And you will eventually reach a point where you have to specialize more. Once you become a, passing like embedded engineer, for example, you're probably going to need to specialize a bit more in embedded engineering because there's some really niche, like esoteric stuff that you need to learn in embedded engineering that you won't need to learn as a game developer. That said, that bar is way further to the right than folks think. Folks really think like, okay, I just graduated college. I'm going to write a little bit of Python code and then I'm going to specialize in data science, or I'm going to specialize in embedded engineering, or I'm going to specialize in kernel development. And like, you can. I don't think it's a good way to run your career. You need to become a generalist. Go and write a game 1 week, and then the next week write a web app, and try to find areas between those 2 development experiences that mesh. You'll find it happens a lot. You'll find that like the process of rendering a game is kind of similar to the way that processing a web application works. The way that you need to handle state in a game is kind of similar to the way that you need to handle state in a web application. If you end up having to write netcode, you'll find that a lot of the ways that you interact with third-party APIs within a web application is fairly similar to the way that you have to write client-server code within games. Now, they're not the same at all. We're talking about two different language sets that you're going to be dealing with. You're going to talk about like all kinds of differences, but you're going to find a lot of similarities. Okay, now you've got that done. Now, don't go and write 50 different web applications. Go and develop some malware. I do it on this channel. It's fun. It's really, really cool to learn a lot of that stuff. I am not good at it, but it's really fun to learn it. And once you've written a little bit of malware, all of a sudden you've written some low-level code that you understand. It's like kind of cool. You're kind of learning different parts of the Windows API. You're learning kind of how to obfuscate what you're doing on a system. Okay, now write a kernel driver. Ooh, now that sounds scary, but you've written some malware. You've done some low-level stuff. You kind of understand how that stuff works. Now go and write a kernel driver. What you'll find is you're already interacting a little bit with the kernel when you're writing malware. Now you're writing kernel drivers themselves. It's a lot lower level. You're going to learn a lot from it. Okay, now stop. Go and write another game or another web app. What I'm saying here is each of these different experiences, you're going to run into core computer science problems. We're talking about like data science and algorithm stuff, especially within like writing video games, tons of math and data science and algorithm stuff that you'll be able to apply to data science, that you'll be able to apply to machine learning if you want to go in that direction. Lots of different directions that you can go here. But the point is, become a generalist, understand how to write good software in general, learn lots of different lessons within these niches, and then over time, you're going to end up finding something that you really like. Like for me, it took a long time for me to really understand what the deal is with software development and all of the different areas that you can go in, and I still haven't experienced everything. And I've been at this for, it's been 8 years now. I'm not even senior, and I still have so much to learn. And folks who are senior in the field are still learning. The point being is like you don't want to like heavily specialize right out of college and then end up hating what you do, but now you've spent all of this time spinning your wheels specializing, and now you've got to basically reverse course and go and do something else. So those 2 points are done, and I've rambled on about this for like 10 minutes now. My point, kind of at the core of all of this, is don't become a specialist too early. Don't become a specialist probably ever. You might end up going down some path and becoming a specialist in some area of software development for your 9 to 5. If you're an embedded engineer, maybe spend some time writing games outside of that. Maybe spend some time writing web applications outside of that. Don't ever just hyper focus on your specialty to where you're not learning anything else, because you'll kind of stagnate that way and you might end up hating it, honestly. Just be a generalist for a little while. Learn how to write really good code before you just hyper focus on some specialty. You might enjoy it. I might be wrong. Who knows? Who cares? Take it easy. Peace.